Welcome everyone who's here on the call. Thanks so much for joining us today. The Sustainable Change Alliance conversation today with Nikki Parr of Women's Economic Ventures. I'm Kaya Jordan. I'm one of the founding board members for SCA. We're a foundation of local professionals who support investing in our community through engagement, events, education. We focus on solutions for businesses, harness the power of private, nonprofit, and public sectors to address environmental and social problems, and discussions around aligning our wealth and capital with our values. I'd like to acknowledge the many board members that have put a lot of time into making this happen, particularly in this season when we've readjusted to do these calls and bring people together through these conversations where we can meet in person. And we have some very important sponsors for our organization and for this event. Specifically our founding sponsors, Maps.com, Argyle Capital Partners, and UBS. We have platinum sponsor through Nixon Peabody Law Firm, gold sponsor, JP Morgan Chase, and silver sponsor, Breshears Insurance, who have all helped us as well with our foundation needs. And if you're not a member and are interested in being further involved beyond these conversations that are open to everyone right now, love for you to join. You can do that on our website at sustainablechangealliance.org. And for all of you, this session is being recorded. You've all been put on mute other than Nikki and myself and another board member. And we are doing this together, so there may be a few mistakes along the way with hearing people. There's a chat tool down in the bottom right corner when you click on the manage participants, and you can send me directly conversations throughout this call today, and for me to ask Nikki questions. So this as I said, is being recorded, and we'll provide a link to review it for you, for friends that may not have been able to make the call as well later. So with that, I'd love to welcome Nikki from Women's Economic Ventures to speak with us and share about all the good work that she and Weave are doing in our community. Many of you may be familiar with Weave, but Nikki, if you'd start us off by telling us quickly a little bit about Weave and how you got to Weave, that would be really great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking us to participate in your conversation today. So Weave is a nonprofit that was founded 29 years ago here in Santa Barbara by Marsha Bailey. It is a women's business center designated by the SBA and provides training and consulting for women entrepreneurs, but not just for women entrepreneurs, male entrepreneurs also. In the last 5 years, we've had about 1,500 clients come through our doors. In addition to training and consulting, we also provide funding. So that's a really important component of the work that we do, is to help pre-bankable people that want to start a business or want to expand in their business actually get going. And in the last 5 years, we've funded about $1.3 million worth of loans to those businesses. In terms of my journey into Weave, I joined them 2 years ago after the Thomas Fire and the Montecito debris flow. They were looking to bring on what was called a business recovery specialist. We had a lot of clients reach out to us during the aftermath of those disasters who were really struggling and just really needed somebody to work through their financials with them, look at the strategy, and potentially go through the SBA to apply for disaster funding. And so Weave was pretty unique in creating a role that specifically dealt with that. And I actually was doing office hours at the Montecito Center and working with the long-term recovery group there, sort of as a small business advocate. On the back of that, we were given $750,000 from Wells Fargo, which we gave out in the form of grants to 96 businesses in Santa Barbara, Ventura, and Los Angeles counties. And that was then rolled into the Woolsey fire relief efforts as well. So we've kind of got our feet wet in the disaster recovery world. And it's been a really interesting couple of years.
2 years later, after coming for a significant disaster event in our community, how has that experience prepared, unfortunately, for the experience that we're having right now and the needs of small businesses in our community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gave us a platform to quickly reference back to. And so, you know, the fact that we could put in place a response line, have people that were ready to answer questions, kind of know where to look for sort of support and advice. And then critically to bring back a loan product that we put in at the time, which was called the Quick Response Loan. This was up to $10,000 available very quickly to qualifying applicants at a low interest rate with deferred repayments. And I think the fact that we had experience doing that 2 years ago just meant that very quickly we were able to kind of stand up and communicate to the community that we were here to support and provide guidance to small business owners.
How do, you know, you've talked about SBA loans already, and there's clearly some interaction between Weave being, let's say, a conduit for that. You know, we have SBA lenders in town. A lot of banks are SBA lenders. Not every bank is. We also have, you know, some have heard of CDFIs, the community development financing institutions. Where do you fall in that kind of suite of players? And how should we think of Weave as maybe being different from a SBA lender that's more like a banking institution versus a community development fund, let's say?
Yeah, well, it's important to note that we are a CDFI. So we are a community-based lender that's receiving those designated CDFI funds. And it gives us a unique position because we're able to make loans that banks typically don't like to. You know, I think people have the impression that if you set up a small business, that you can just go to your bank and they will happily, you know, write you the check and give you the money and off you go, when that's really not the case. It's a rare instance where a bank will fund a startup. And so, you know, we give that option to people of being that lender. But we go kind of further than that. I think what's important is that we work really closely with each of our clients, and we work with them to help them become bankable. And so we will make sure that they're receiving training on, you know, how to read a financial statements. They can join our consulting programs and advisory programs where they will meet with a business advisor at least once a month, can be more. They can receive specialist advice in particular areas. So we're really vested in the success of our clients. And develop a pretty close relationship with them and help bring them along with the goal that eventually they, you know, will have sustained profitability and then be able to go to a bigger bank and kind of be bankable and get that kind of loan. We are an SBA micro lender, but we're not one of the 7A lenders. Typically the big banks are.
Can you share with us a little bit about the different profiles that you would have as clients, if you call them that, on the, let's say on the lower end of the spectrum where they might be really small, and what that looks like versus where someone might top out as qualifying for involvement in the Weave program?
Yeah, sorry, making you hear that. That's a good question. I'd say, you know, most typically the clients that are coming to us at the early stages as solopreneurs, you know, so it'll be them, maybe one or two other employees. And those initial loans may be in the realm of $10,000 to $20,000. Where we start to see people topping out, as you say, is where their revenues are going to be north of, potentially $1 million, where they're seeing, 5 to 20 employees. But I'd say that, we definitely focus more on the 0 to 5 employee range. Average revenues probably around $300,000 to $500,000. Several years in, actually. I mean, a lot of them, we deal with a lot of startups as well, smaller startups. So it's definitely on the micro scale. But as I said, there's very few organizations that are addressing that tranche of business size.
I'm familiar with some small businesses having a hard time even qualifying for SBA loans, where there are certain parameters that can actually even be specific to the individual SBA lender. There's kind of a base typically for SBA eligibility, and there can be layers that are added or subtracted based on the risk of the SBA lender themselves. And I've seen small businesses that don't qualify for SBA lending because maybe they're growing too rapidly. They've taken investments and they might qualify based on their P&L having a negative net income, which is actually one of the things that can be attractive because they don't qualify for typical bank financing. But then their growth trajectory and continued investment in those things that on a P&L cause you to have losses over the years disqualifies you from some of those opportunities. For a growth company, do they ever fit in the model of Weave? And if so, at what size? So maybe there's a specific client that you can think about or mention names or not mention names that have been able to grow through the program with Weave and maybe grow out of Weave into a larger capacity.
Yeah, no, that's certainly been the case. And we kind of celebrate that moment when that happens. Yeah, I can think of a couple of businesses just recently that I'd say they're probably 3 to 5 years in on their journey. I can't necessarily speak to, their revenue sizes because I don't deal with the loans as closely as some of my colleagues, but it's definitely the case that we will, it's usually actually when they kind of reach the end of our first loan term. Our loans are typically in the 3 to 5 year range. So they'll get to the end of that cycle and we'll be considering further debt. And, ideally at that point, we can kind of graduate them onto ideally one of the local regional banks. We try to have a good relationship with those organizations so that they're referring clients to us that they can't fulfill, but in the hope that, when they're able to move on to the SBA or the larger lenders, that we can refer that back to them. Plus they have a sense of comfort that these have been Weave clients for several years and that, ideally they'll have been through some advisory and some training and will be kind of well-versed in small business basics and particularly finances, because that's where the area that we see a lot of need and emphasis.
Can you tell us a little bit about that training and the program that you provide as support for them?
Yeah, so up until 8 weeks ago, we had the Smart Entrepreneurial Training Program, which is a 14-week in-person, soup to nuts, learn how to start a business and write your business plan course. That was run twice a year in 2 locations, in English and in Spanish. And then we had an introductory 4-week Explore, which was a sort of precursor to the SET program, where you really start talking about a business concept and how much viability may it have, and is this something you want to do before you actually head into the 14-week SET program, which really takes you quite far down the path. We had never run online programs before, and within 3 days we had to then switch all of our 5 courses that were being run in person to finally going online, which was something that we've been looking forward to doing anyway. So it facilitated that. But what we're realizing now is we're taking a little bit of a pause in response to COVID to look at what is it that small business owners really need now and for the next 8 to 12 months, and how can we adjust our training to meet that need. And I think what we'll start to do, and this is all kind of still in the process of being worked out, is take shorter chunks of time, perhaps a 4-week, business sprint through an area like e-commerce, or an area like social media marketing, or an area like, how to build your pipeline and really build relationships with your clients. Things that are very specific to what we consider the COVID recovery and kind of building back the economic growth in this area.
How do you talk about, if you do, sustainability within the program as they think about business, whether it's environmental, financial, community impact? Are those areas you talk about or address as people are thinking about their business and role in the community?
I don't know whether something like sustainability is addressed explicitly, but I feel like it is implicit within our Weave community and within the way that we're instructing. We're very local. Everything is occurring in Santa Barbara and Ventura counties. You'll get to know your instructors. You'll get to know the clients and the cohort around you. Our clients are names down State Street. It's all it's very community based, I would say. And so I think, intrinsic to that is the sustainability piece, because it brings transparency when you're so closely integrated with your community. But in terms of, I'll always go back to the financial piece. That's my background, is in finance and accounting. And that's the area that we see lacking the most in small business owners. And that was what came out of the disasters from 2 years ago, when we were thinking, we can't just give people money during the grant program. We also need to provide training, and what are the areas that are really important in terms of resiliency and sustainability. And we just keep coming back to that financial preparedness and that financial understanding. So I feel like it will continue to be emphasized in our programming. But I think the environmental piece just flows through in terms of the type of clients that we attract into our training programs and into the advisory programs, which is great. One of our biggest clients is, I wouldn't say biggest, but one of our kind of most, what would be engaged clients. She's called Tinkerbell Diaper Service, and she provides cloth diapers all around this area, home delivery service. And so, you take the net impact of what she's doing with her business from an environmental standpoint, and she's making a huge difference. So that's one example of one of our successful clients.
So I believe entrepreneurs apply to be part of the Weave program. Is there a typical profile for these entrepreneurs, or even sectors, businesses, markets that they fit within?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Our focus is in supporting low-income communities, supporting minorities and women. So, 85% of our clients are women, 34% are Hispanic, and 70% are low income. The age demographic, I don't want to generalize too much on that, but in terms of the type of businesses that they're launching, we see a lot of, there's a lot of kind of aesthetic products, kind of lifestyle products, retail concepts. So things like the refill shop down in Ventura. That's another example of a sustainable business. It's hard for me to generalize actually on the types of businesses, but they're, I'd say, more retail, service, hospitality, caterers, events, photography, and then health and fitness, those kinds of businesses.
I know we probably all interact with clients of Weave, and there are some names that are well known. Are there any that you can share to kind of allow us to know who we are supporting Weave through when we're a customer, and how you benefit through that, and who some of those companies are?
Yeah, I mean, again, if you sort of take a walk down State Street, and I'm going to mentally do that in my head now. We've got Brazil Arts near the top, and Hook and Press Donuts with Buena Onda, who are now in the Mosaic. They actually, I think, went through the program together. Going further down, Chocolat de Calibresson, we've got Cat Therapy. I don't know if anybody's been there. Diogi. Access Santa Barbara, which is the catalog that goes to support schools in the area. And I'm probably leaving a whole, Janine's Bakery. We've picked up a few new clients in the last 8 weeks through the response loan that we put in place for COVID. So it's been a really busy time for us, but we get a lot of gratification supporting our businesses. Say Cheese, another huge one. How could I forget that? We love them all, and I hope they love us.
I'm sure they do. How has this specific, disaster with COVID and the effects of that changed some of the topics you've had to address with your training? Have you guys internally had to make some adjustments and find ways to address that for your clients?
Yeah, and that's we're right in the middle of that now, and so we're in this sort of really interesting point of knowing that we can't necessarily go back to the old way of doing things, and trying to analyze what's going to serve our clients best. I mean, we did have programs that were still running, so we have, we're going to finish out the season on those. But as I said, we're definitely going to be more specific and deliberate in the types of training that we're going to be offering. And in terms of the advisory side, again, it comes back to specificity of subject matter, and also just giving people more time with an advisor, recognizing that, an hour a month is probably not going to cut it right now, that they need some more intensive focus periods of time to work through some specific areas, whether that's rebranding or moving their business in a different direction, or really honing e-commerce, whatever it is for them that's going to be relevant. Because as people have said, we're not going to go back to a normal. We need to accept this as our new normal and move forward from here, knowing that there's probably going to be some more bumps along the way.
Have you seen companies have to pivot and make changes to their business model to address the current environment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any of those you can share?
Yeah, so it's probably the biggest example that we have is a company called Seasons Catering, which was our client of the year a few years ago. They revenue over $1 million, and they're a big event caterer. So they were one of the first calls that we received 2 months ago, as they could see all the bookings just evaporate. And, a big payroll, lots of employees, and a business that really values the sort of familial relationship it has with its employees. So, one of our advisors sat down with the owner and really looked at the financials and started to talk to her about possible shifts that she could make in the business. And she's now moved to community meal preparation. People can pick up their dinner. They can pick up something called a sunshine box, which has all these lovely products in it. But from there, she also started working with an organization called World Central Kitchen, which come in during times of disasters to provide meals to kind of organizations that need that kind of frontline assistance in feeding their employees. And it happened to be one of the hospitals down in Ventura that was participating in that program. So, that caterer was able to really kind of move and keep things ticking over in her business. That's a major example. Another smaller example would be a cycle shop that's one of our clients. I believe that they're close to the public. Sorry, very noisy. And and they're doing online kind of Q&A sessions and pro advisor sessions, and to keep that relationship with their clients and to provide something of service and value to them. And that's an important point too. I think a lot of small business owners are panicking if they can't come up with a quick pivot, or they can't think of some brilliant idea in the next 3 days that's going to save their business or kind of diversify their revenue. But really, going back to your customer base and kind of affirming that relationship with them, and sort of checking in and just assuring them that you'll be there when things do reopen is also really powerful.
Sorry, I've got a great question here from Linda. Are you seeing collaborations happening during this time because of COVID between either existing businesses or businesses and nonprofits? Are you seeing some changes that are new based on this environment specifically?
That's a great question, Linda. I wish I'd had time to prep that one, actually, because I'm sure there probably are. I'm trying to rack my brains quickly to think of any direct client examples. And I can't think of any very quickly. Yeah. But what I will mention, because you said business and nonprofit, and there's an organization called Santa Barbara Better Together, which you may be familiar with, which has kind of teamed up with the Santa Barbara Foundation. And that initiative is spearheaded by Deckers. And Deckers, they wanted to help support small businesses during this period. So Weave was able to benefit from that fund and make sure that those funds are being loaned to small businesses through our QRL program. So that's a really, really powerful example of where big business can be stepping in to support small business in, kind of in a indirect way through working with an organization like ours, but making sure that the money is kind of being put to direct benefit to the small business.
John Glanville asked, how about restaurants and the food bank? Are you seeing seeing interactions between the two of those with any of your customers?
Yeah, I mean, it may be happening, but I'm not able to track all of our clients and what they've been up to. I think that, there are many success stories. And I think that's one of the positives that comes out of an event like this, is that it just forces us to think about things that we hadn't previously considered, but are hugely beneficial on a community basis. And that's kind of the beauty of this.
For some that don't know the numbers, how many, if you have them in front of you, how many active customers, clients are going through your program? How many graduates are there? Do someone, for us to understand the scale and depth that you guys have in our community that we may not quite understand?
Yeah, so I'm going to cheat here and bring up my cheat sheet. So, well, in the last 5 years, we've helped 1,500 clients start or grow their business. We track jobs created as part of that, and it's approximately 2 jobs for each client. So, we've helped create or sustain over 3,000 jobs. Wow. We've made, as I said, over $1.8 million worth of loans in the last 5 years. So we're kind of small and mighty. The loan sizes may not be huge, but they're at ground level making a really big difference. But, in context to that, in the last 8 weeks, we've spoken to over 300 clients. And we've received over 160 loan applications totaling nearly 1.8 million. So the rate, there's this huge rate of work that we've been doing just in the last 8 weeks as well. And that helpfully gives some context to our operation.
If I heard that right, you said you've had 1.8 million in essentially loan requests.
Yeah.
Over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
And if that's not a scale that you're ready to take on, how do we as individuals and a community support that for you guys?
Thank you for asking. I think there's probably a couple of ways. There's, we have a team of 3 right now working in the loans department that are just, working very hard, and to be able to bring on staff to support them would be amazing. So, we're often looking at operating costs and capital. Those are kind of the 2 areas that we like to be funded in. I mean, we have, and that's something that we haven't talked about actually, is how Weave is funded, because we are a nonprofit. We receive probably equally from 5 different areas, and I'll try and remember each of the 5, but there's, you know, private individual donors, there's corporate donors, there's local municipalities, foundations, and then the SBA. And, you know, we do try and even out the kind of the proportion, so that we're not overly dependent on one area. But often operating funds are the thing that are the hardest, you know, because it's basically not as accountable as a sort of specific donation. But yeah, those are the 2 areas. But the capital fund, I think, is, you know, that's where we're seeing the biggest need right now, because there's just that volume of loan requests that we're meeting. And, you know, I mean, it's dropped off slightly, but if we're heading into reopening, there's costs that are going to be associated with that I think a lot of businesses may not have anticipated. If you think of, you know, a restaurant, for example, that needs to stock up on all the inventory that it let go of 8 weeks ago. And then, you know, there may be further periods of stay at home in the future. So, you know, we are, you know, I think this will continue in some shape or form.
You know, a lot of the small businesses are just scrambling to even understand all of the EIDL grants, EIDL phase 2, once that loan comes through, the PPP, and then even if they get that, struggling to understand, what does this mean? How do I make this forgivable? And Congress doesn't even know how to sort that out yet. They're getting IRS recommendations, and Congress is trying to reframe that. How are you working with clients who might be sorting through that? Are there recommendations that, yes, please apply for this, and we have, you know, the back end that is helpful, or the front end that's helpful? How are you interacting in that ecosystem right now that a lot of them are struggling to figure out how to deal with opportunities that are unique to the situation, but still confusing?
Absolutely. Very directly. I mean, that takes up the bulk of my day these days, is responding to clients and trying to stay abreast of the developments, you know, from the PPP and the SBA. On a practical level, you know, we were approached about a week ago by one of the local regional banks, who basically said, look, we're getting a lot of PPP applications from small business owners, but they're not complete, they're inaccurate, and we really want to help these organizations. So if we work with you, if you can kind of, you know, recommend some of refer your clients that haven't got a PPP yet, or pre-screen some of the applications, that way we can make the loans to the people that really need them. So that was a really proactive and positive step by that bank. And we've managed to get at least 20 of our clients through and funded 4 or 5 days later, which is, you know, incredible when you hear some of the horror stories that people have had with the PPP. We also work pretty closely with the EDC down in Camarillo, the Economic Development Collaborative, not the Environmental Defense Council. But the EDC are a small business development center, a bit bigger than our organization. And, you know, we just try and kind of share information, and we'll refer them to their webinars, and they'll refer to ours, and just, you know, keep trying to get clear information that we can communicate to our clients, so that when they do call us, you know, we have a coherent answer for them, and they feel some assurance that they're not being given bad information, because there's just a lot of that flying around right now. And so, you know, it's our responsibility to just be an organization that people can trust and go to for guidance, you know, and support.
Titus asked, what does the typical loan look like that you guys may give? And if there's not a typical, what's kind of the range for clients of yours when you guys are funding?
Yeah, I mean, typical loan in terms of the product itself?
Sure, yeah. Yeah,
so, I mean, right now the quick response loan is the only loan that we're doing. It's all hands on deck for that one. That's so $10,000, a 4% interest rate, payable over 3 years, with the first 3 months of repayments deferred. Our typical loan product is anything up to, I think, $100,000 now, at approximately 10% interest rate. I'd have to check on the loan term. I'm not hot on all of those terms, but I'd say our average loan size typically is around $20,000.
Yeah, that's great. You had mentioned the EDC as kind of a partner-like organization, or similar to Weave in another community. Are there other ones, that are around the country in California that you guys have contact with that you might be benefiting from, particularly in this environment? I mean, it sounds like the EDC is a very helpful one.
Yeah.
A community of you that can benefit from each other's knowledge and expanse.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're a part of an organization of women's business centers, which is, so the SBA designates kind of, actually 3, because they also fund SCORE, I think, but they have small business development centers, women's business centers, and SCORE mentors. And so, we're often pretty closely aligned with those other organizations locally. And then within California, there's a California network of women's business centers. And so, we're on a call with them at least once a week, sharing best practices and talking about relevant issues, and also kind of sharing each other's webinars and expertise. And right now we're receiving supplemental funding from the SBA to help with COVID recovery locally. So, that's informing a lot of conversation and programming and just figuring out how we're going to apply these funds.
Yeah. Other than fundraising and capital needs for operations and for loans, do you have volunteer advisors? Do you look for specialists in certain areas to come in and help with some of the training, or mentor, or be paired with some of the customers that you have?
Yeah, we definitely have people that they assist in a variety of ways. So they'll come and be a guest speaker on one of our training programs. And then if there's a specific area of expertise, we can have them on our roster of business advisors to provide, ad hoc guidance. We don't typically do like mentoring on a formal level. We consider that that's something that there's, SCORE has the mentoring piece we consider, and the EDC has the one-off specialist advisory piece. So we try and distinguish ourselves by having more longer-term training and longer-term advisory relationships. But we do supplement those with kind of additional expertise where needed. And volunteer program and the mentorship program are things that we do want to develop and kind of leverage, because there's huge talent of people wanting to work with us, but it's simply a capacity issue for us, for the staff right now. It's just, figuring out how to prioritize and dedicating some resource to, understanding how to best use our volunteers, because there are a lot of people that want to volunteer their time and expertise with us, and we've got to get better at leveraging that.
Looking to see if there's any other questions from people on the call here. For someone who goes through the program, do they graduate from training, and does graduation from training mean they're now funded and the relationship is now as a borrower? And then when that's paid back, are they done, or are they eligible as a borrower again? What's that typical cycle look like for a customer of Weave?
Yeah, well, people can come in at any moment. So it's not like you have to kind of begin your journey at point A and progress through a series of steps. Typically, we do see the most people coming through our SET program, which is the 14-week training program. They do graduate from that when they have produced an acceptable business plan. But then they're on their own, if they want to take the next step and apply for a startup loan, or take a QuickBooks course, or sign up for the business advisory program, they're at liberty to do any of those things, but there's no kind of compulsion on our part. At the end of SET, they're just, released into the world and hopefully know the right things to do to succeed, because they've been through our program. But we're here to support them at any point in the business journey. And I think, we've had a lot of clients stay with us in the Thrive program for many years. And I suspect we're going to get another influx of established businesses coming to us for advisory and perhaps retraining and reorienting on their business plan now as the environment has shifted so much.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any events coming up? I just got a little alert that you have an event coming up next week that we should all be aware of with Kathy Odell.
Yes, I think that's...
who has been very involved with us as well earlier on with SCA and has been a big supporter of us. What's that event? Is that something that people can support and be a part of?
I think it's a conversation with the CEO. So I think it's kind of an update for our funders, donors, prospective donors, to really understand the current environment, what the things that we're working on, and also perhaps Kathy's vision. She joined as the CEO in officially in January of this year. She was kind of helping Marsha with the transition, but it's really trying to understand how she sees Weave's future. And that may have been very different 8 weeks ago to how it is now. So.
Yeah. Well, let's make sure to get that link to include when we send out the recording of this event so that everyone can see that.
Sure.
That'd be really great. Are there any things that have been encouraging to you in this time that you've seen where maybe people have stepped up, organizations, for-profit, nonprofit, that have been supportive of Weave or in this community?
Yeah, absolutely. The Santa Barbara Best Together, as I mentioned before, the local bank. I mean, I think, I think the fact that we we made a name for ourselves 2 years ago in providing the support post Thomas Fire and debris flow. And so I think, people were looking to us during this time, and I feel like it was sort of a ready ask for us, oh yeah, you do the business recovery piece, absolutely, this is what you need the funds for. So, from our experience, we've received an awful lot of support. Actually, something I will mention is Amazon Santa Barbara, who obviously took over at the Saks building. They're an example of that's sort of a big business, but a local relationship. So when they started here in Santa Barbara, they created a position for a community engagement specialist to deliberately work with the local community and foster that connection between Amazon and the local community. And it turns out that the person that got that role used to be at another organization that had received a recovery grant from us. And, so there's just all these interrelationships that are being created, but I just love the fact that Amazon Santa Barbara have, deliberately sought to connect with the local community and integrate with the local community and try and provide support as well, because, they're looking to provide financial support on a small basis and just sponsor events. And yeah, I just wanted to mention that because it's a great example of where big business can be there to support community resilience and small businesses and our organizations like ours. Yeah.
You had mentioned Deckers as well earlier, kind of a large business supporting small businesses through you.
Yeah, exactly. And, there's been a lot of silver linings in this, I think, with, the way that people have kind of stepped up, really. And, you look at what's going on, I think we'll see that more as with the restaurant community here, which is such a huge part of our infrastructure here, and trying to support that industry sector, I think is going to be the next big push.
Yeah. We have a question here again from Linda. Always great questions. How can we support more women in tech and tech startups?
Linda, that's another good question that I would have liked to prepare for. Well, I think, it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but really if you're starting in business, It doesn't matter what kind of industry you're starting in, you still need to have the fundamentals right. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed. So I think we can perhaps explicitly mention the tech sector and wanting to attract more women in STEM and make that an initiative, but it's not necessarily going to change the type of training that we're providing, because what we do is provide business training, and we just want business to succeed rather than a particular type. But yes, I know that we do have a good relationship with the local Women in STEM network, and that's something, especially with Kathy's background, that we can start to build upon more now.
Are you seeing any changes because of this COVID environment in the way that people are approaching their business models that you hope to see be sustained when this is over? You know, what good habits might be formed now that are going to bring us back in a better way if they're kept long term? It's an interesting question to consider. Ultimately, it's how do we come out of this better? And are there any things that you're seeing right now because of this that we can come back stronger?
It's a great question, and I think there's several areas. So this has forced a lot of businesses to, whether they like it or not, to kind of re-strategize. And I think that's often something that small business owners just don't give themselves the time to do, because they're just so in the weeds every day. We would advocate for that level of re-strategizing on a much more regular basis, rather than just kind of being stuck in the day-to-day of what we've done it before, it works, we'll just keep doing it. I think, this time offers an opportunity to really come back to your original intentions with your business, but also look at where you actually are with your business. Do you have the clients that you want? Are you making the margins that you want? Are you as financially savvy as you want to be? And so I think, I will always go on about financial planning and preparedness and sort of using this time to get more strategic in how you're borrowing money, spending money, reviewing your expenses and your overheads. But right now is sort of an emergency period. So there's probably decisions being made now that may not have as much longevity because we're in, response mode. I think really what I'm trying to say is it comes back down to taking the time to plan and be thoughtful and mindful about what it really is you're doing and where you see yourself going, without it being forced upon you, which is what's happened.
I'm sure with, your involvement coming in to address the debris flow and the Thomas Fire effects, and now COVID-19, is that shifting some of the lens that which you'll approach the training? Will resiliency, preparing for something that becomes permanently integrated into your training?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's already happened. We introduced a QuickBooks coaching course about 6 months ago, which gives clients the opportunity to work one-on-one very intensively with an advisor to really help them understand the importance of accurate and regular data entry, the reports that they should be running, how to look ahead and do a cash flow forecast and budgeting. And I think, the more that we can keep emphasizing that. But then the other piece of it is around, evolving your business and in order to be resilient as a business owner, you got to keep looking around and seeing, is your environment changed and how you respond to that. So, the whole marketing and sales and customer service piece and evaluating those aspects of the business are also really important. I see those as definitely the focus right now for us and e-commerce. I think providing those trainings. And then also just sort of general personal financial literacy and understanding. We want people to be successful in life broader than just their business. Are they saving adequately for the future? Are they saving for retirement? Do they have enough to save for an emergency fund. You know, just to bring that level of awareness as well to the kind of bigger personal picture.
I have a great question. I think this is a great one to end on from Cheryl at UCSB. If you could only give one piece of advice to a woman just starting her business, what would you say? Other than go to Weave as a, go through our training.
It's a phrase that's just come up so much in the last week or 2 weeks for me, but don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Just get stuck in and start.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time away from all the other things that are so important that you're doing in our community. Really appreciate that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming in at a really hard time and being able to tackle another hard time. So we really appreciate all the work you're doing and being a part of this community in such a vital way.
You're welcome.
Thank you. The thank yous just keep pouring in down here. So
thanks everyone for the
you.
invitation.
Thank you.